Those chords you heard are just 3 notes played at the same time. That's the whole definition. And there are 2 simple ways to build any major or minor chord from scratch without memorizing a single chart. If notes are the letters of music, then chords are the words. And today we're going to build a few of our own. By the end of this video, you'll be able to build any major or minor chord anywhere in the piano, whether or not you know the scale it comes from. And you'll dodge the one little habit that makes beginners' chord playing sound blocky. Hi, I'm Anna. I'm a piano teacher and I work here at Flowkey. So chords look advanced, but they're really one of the first doors that opens the whole world of music. So let's get into it. Chord names really do look a bit like a code, but I promise you there's no code to crack here. A chord is simply 3 or more notes played together at the same time. That's the whole intimidating subject in one sentence, and almost all the music you want to play is built on chords. Now, there are many different kinds of chords. You might have heard the words major or minor before, and those are words that are used to describe the character, or what we call the quality of a chord. So whether the music feels happy or sad or something in between. So let's take a look at an example. This is C major. It sounds bright and open, but let's hear what happens if we move one key down just a single note. Then it transforms into C minor. The same 3 fingers, 1 key of difference, and the whole mood changed from sunshine to something wistful. A subtle move, but it changes the whole feeling of the chord. So let's talk about the different ways to build a chord, and then you'll give it a try yourself. So there are 2 main ways to build a chord, and today I'll cover both because different people like different approaches. So let's dive into the first. If you know how to play a scale, then you already know it's chord. Just take the first note of the scale, which we call the root, then the 3rd, and the 5th, and play them together. Those numbers, 1, 3, and 5, are what we call scale degrees, and they just mark the position of a note within a scale. So in C major, the first note is C, the 3rd note of the scale is E, and the 5th note is G. C, E, and G together make a C major chord, the one that we started with in the beginning of the video. And that same pattern, 1st, 3rd, and 5th, works in any scale you know. So now it's your turn. Let's try building a G major chord this time. If you know the G major scale already, that's great. But if not, no worries. We can put the notes up on the screen. And remember that you're looking for the 1st, 3rd, and 5th notes of the scale. Feel free to pause if you need some time to find them. Okay, so the 1st, 3rd, and 5th notes of G major scale are G, B, and D. Play them all together and you get your very first chord, G major. If you don't know your scales, or you'd simply rather not think about scales at all, it's completely fine. You can still build a chord using the second way, where you actually count your way from note to note, almost like a little recipe. But before we count, just one quick thing. We refer to whole steps and half steps when talking about the distance between notes of a scale. So a half step is the distance from one key to the very next key, whether black or white, with nothing in between. And a whole step is 2 of those, so effectively skipping over 1 key. That's all we need to know now to build a major chord from scratch. So pick any starting note. I'm going to use E for this example. And from your starting note, count 2 whole steps up to find the middle note, and then 1.5 steps up from there to find the top note. 2 whole steps, then 1.5. And that's a major chord, built purely by counting with no scale needed. It may feel a little slow the first few times, but over time it becomes automatic and your hand starts to learn the shapes of the different chords. Let's do one more on a different note just so you trust this recipe. Let's start on B. Now 2 whole steps up from there gets us to D sharp as our middle note. And then another step and a half from there gets us F sharp as our top note. So that's a B major chord. Same recipe, different starting note, but it works every single time. And here's a lovely bonus. Now that you know how to find any major chord, you can actually transform it easily into its minor version just by dropping the middle note down a half step. That's the same happy to sad shift we heard at the very start, and now you know exactly where it comes from. So try that flip yourself. Play C major, then move the middle note, the E, one key down to E flat, which is the black note just below it. That's C minor. And listen to the effect of that subtle shift, how it turns from something bright and happy to something darker. Okay, quick pause, because if you want to dive deeper into chords, then you can also open Flowkey here and head into one of our chords courses, such as mastering chords or improvising with chords. It's free to get started, and the link is in the description. Now, at the beginning of the video, I mentioned that there is a habit some beginners have when it comes to playing chords that tends to make the chords sound blocky and robotic, rather than smooth and musical. When beginners learn chords, they tend to play every chord in the same way, with the root note on the bottom. So for example, a C major chord with a C as the lowest note, or an F chord with F as the lowest note. That's what we call root position. And there's nothing wrong with root position itself, except that going from one chord to the next in a chord progression, your hand ends up having to jump a lot around the keyboard, and that leaping is what makes it sound blocky. So the fix is what we call inversions, and it's friendlier than it sounds. It's basically just taking the same 3 notes but stacking them in a different order. So at C major, for example, we can take the root note, C, and move it up to the top. And this gives us the first inversion with E as the lowest note. And then we can go one step further and throw the E up top as well, so that G is now the bottom note. This is second inversion. Let's see how this works in practice with a super common chord progression, C, F, G, C. If I play everything in root position, this is how it sounds. Notice how my hand had to constantly relocate for each chord. But if I use inversions, suddenly the transitions become seamless. Did you hear how much smoother that was? And also, did you notice how my hand barely moved? So if you really want to improve your chord playing, don't only ever practice the root position of chords. Also get to know each chord's inversions and explore how it feels to use inversions to connect one chord to another. Your chord changes will sound noticeably smoother. So where do you take all of this? Well, everything we've just built is already sitting inside the songs you want to play. So let's look at one together. So this is Amazing Grace. It's one of the most popular songs in the Flowkey library. And if you look up here, just above the notes, you'll see these chord symbols. There's an F chord, and then there's a B flat chord in an inversion with an F as the lowest note. That's what the slash means. So if you want to play the chords instead of the sheet music that's written there, you already can because you know how to build those chords from scratch. A song that would have looked like a wall of notes to you only 10 minutes ago is really just a handful of chords that you already know with a melody sitting on top of them. And a chord doesn't have to be squashed into one hand either. In a lot of songs, your left hand might play the 3 notes spread out one after another, while your right hand plays the melody on top. That's actually how we've written the left hand in the intermediate arrangement of Amazing Grace. It's still the very same chords you just learned to build, just a different way of putting the notes together. So one more time, a chord is 3 or more notes played together. You can build any major or minor chord 2 different ways, either from the scale, taking the first, third, and fifth notes, or by counting 2 whole steps between the bottom and the middle notes, and then 1.5 steps between the middle and the top. And if your chord playing starts to sound blocky at all, just remember to use inversions to smoothly connect from one chord to the next. So now you can build the chords that are sitting inside almost every song you'd want to play. There's a chords library on the Flowkey website, and it goes much further than we could today. You click on any chord, and you see it from above as if you were looking at your own hands, with all of the inversions laid out and how to play each one. If you do one thing after this video, let it be that. And the link is in the description. When you want to start putting these chords into real songs, the Mastering Chords course goes deeper on what we covered today, and it's free to get started. And if you'd like to know which songs to try all this out on, the ones that sound genuinely impressive, even at a beginner level, we've made a whole video on exactly that, and it's linked right here. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.